You are now watching Maine Wire TV with your host, Tom Shattuck, featuring Maine Wire Editor-in-Chief Steve Robinson and the indispensable John Featherston.
Never a boring day. Steve Robinson, editor of the Robinson Report. John Featherston, you know him, reporter with the Maine Wire, and Graham Pollard with the Maine Wire as well. I'm Tom Shattuck with the Maine Wire, and the boys have been in action again early this morning on a ride-along with ICE, and I don't want to give too much away because there's some things we can't talk about, some things we can. I do want to say this. John Featherston today wrote, let me set expectations. There was no gunfire or abduction of anybody today. Steve didn't use his Desert Eagle or whatever that thing he was shooting with Sean Ryan the other day. But I thought that your experience was described very well in an editorial that Featherston wrote today. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the demeanor and what you could take of the character of the ICE guys and kind of emphasize that part of it, since we're not dealing with a whole lot of bang stuff, at least on this day. So take us through. First of all, how'd you get in touch with these guys? Where'd they grab you? I see Steve dressed like a commando here in the picture. What's up there? How did it all come together? Take us through the day.
Well, I mean, we reached out to ICE just to gather information on various stories. So we have a relationship with them, and we inquired about doing a ride along, which is something that I'd talked with Todd Lyons about for a long time. I mean, going back to when he was the director of ICE ERO in Boston. I think John knew him and I knew him as well. And we'd always talked about doing a ride along, but nothing had ever come to fruition. And when the Operation Catch of the Day started to unfold in Maine, and there's all kinds of scurrilous things being said, inflammatory things on both sides, since it's the hottest news story, I figured there's no better time now. If you've got a ride along to call in with law enforcement, there's no better time than when it's capturing statewide and national headlines. So we reached out, and they didn't really have any conditions other than don't reveal the identities of ICE officers, and other than that, they let us record pretty much whatever we wanted to do. They answered our questions on background, gave us on-the-record interviews and statements. So it was a great journalistic opportunity to see what's actually happening with ICE. And as you alluded to, a little bit of a dull day. I was ready to go see some, protesters tear gassed. I thought we were going to see some purple-headed weirdos thrown on the ground. Believing the left-wing media, I thought that this was going to be an action-packed day. But instead, we were sitting with some ICE agents and waiting for an illegal alien drunk driver to come out of his taxpayer-subsidized apartment, and they were going to arrest him there. But it seems that maybe the cover was blown, maybe the ICE Out app succeeded, maybe the heroes huffing on their whistles successfully alerted this drunk driver that there might be somebody ready to grab him and deport him. But they decided to call off the operation at some point during the day because they decided that their cover had been blown. So not the most exciting adventure ride along with ICE. We may get a chance to do another one, but I think still there were definitely some valuable insights learned, and the experience and the interview just totally refute everything that the Democratic politicians have been saying about what ICE is doing. There's a lie propagating that they're targeting Somalis. They're not. The ICE agents that we were with, they didn't even know the ethnicity or country of origin where this individual lived. It was based on like a license plate or something, and address information. There was other information that went into it. There's no targeting by race or ethnicity or any of that happening. It's all based on criminal histories. So they have criminal records and immigration histories, and they know based on HSI research where these individuals are living or where they're suspected to be living, where they've obtained work permits, or where Shanabellos has given them a driver's license, and they're using that information to go out and do targeted enforcement. So they're here every single time the vehicles go out, they are going to find a specific person who has committed crimes and is here illegally. or even just a visa overstay or an immigration violator. And whenever there's an illegal alien who doesn't have this criminal record of drug dealing or violence or whatever we've seen on the worst of the worst list, they're arrested incidental to another immigration enforcement action, which is totally in line with what law enforcement does in any traffic stop. I don't know if you guys have ever been involved in a traffic stop where, there's 3 people in the car or 4 people in the car, but it's very common for law enforcement to ask for the identifying documents on everybody in the car. It's routine police work to check and see, well, is the passenger in the car? Is there a warrant out for their arrest? That's just what cops do, and it's no exception when ICE is stopping somebody. So they'll find people who are present in the country illegally when they're actually looking for a driver who has a criminal history in their home country or a criminal history in the U.S. and wasn't deported because Biden was president. And then the last thing I would say is there's a lot of talk about background checks about this corrections officer in Cumberland County who was squeaky clean, according to Sheriff Joyce. Ditto for the Old Orchard Beach police officer who was grabbed and deported last year. But the background check system very obviously is flawed, and it can't pull information from someone's home country. It's similar to what we saw with the Chinese marijuana grows, where someone comes over the border, they get a New York driver's license with whatever name. They could make up the name 2 seconds ago, and it goes on to the New York driver's license. And then they come up here to get a marijuana license, and they do a Maine criminal background check on them. And it's like, yeah, the guy's Maine criminal background check is clear, and probably his national criminal background check is clear, but that's because he's using an identity that was just whipped up a month ago. So I think that this isn't any Maine sheriff's fault or any Maine law enforcement or even really ICE's fault. It's just a weakness in the background check that really hasn't been improved to, I guess, deal with the repercussions of what happens when 20 million or 30 million people cross the border illegally, and there's this hodgepodge of different immigration statuses like asylum seeker, green card holder, refugee. There's multiple classes of refugees. So the background check system definitely needs some work. But all in all, I would say not the most exciting day. A little humdrum. We did get some close-up views of some protesters, some agitators. I'll say that they are not as successful as they think they are. Mostly, they're providing comic relief for the ICE agents, and for me too. But it was a good chance to see firsthand what's happening with Operation Catch of the Day. And the most important thing I could underscore is that it's all targeted enforcement. They're out there. They're not out there going door to door. They're not going after schools or churches as some lunatics have been posting online. They're doing targeted enforcement to remove criminals, and there's a lot of lying going on. A lot of lying going on.
So I just want to that the image we just saw, that woman. There is a nose ring in that picture. You got to zoom up close to it, but the right nostril has all the bona fides. We are told. I'm told by Graham Plattner and I'm told by Shanna Bellows, John, that these ICE agents are hardos and thugs and bloodthirsty punks. Well, you got to sit in the car for hours with these people. Tell me a little about them.
Salt of the earth, and as we put up on the editorial, you can find it on all of our social media pages. I mean, these guys, you'd want these guys to be your next door neighbors. You'd want to be friends with them. You'd want these people to marry your daughter or be part of your family. They're salt of the earth guys. And the biggest takeaway from me is, here I am sitting, and immediately we establish a bond, and they just prove by their words and by their actions that they're here because they care about the community. They want to get that bad person out of your community, even though they know they're going to be harassed and called evil words. They still show up to work every day, act like professionals. And maybe I'll disagree with Steve just a little bit. It was a boring day because I was hoping to see a little bit more action on the street too. But we can't tell you where we were, but when we went back to the office to have Steve's exclusive interview with the assistant director of ICE, we got to see everything behind the scenes, like the guys working on the computers, the guys processing people in and out of the center. We actually saw a detainee come in and be processed throughout. There's a lot of things going on here. This isn't this whole rogue thing that, Shelley Pingree, who, says that, these attorneys aren't allowed to see their clients in there. Well, then how come I saw attorneys today? Like Shelley Pingree, you're lying to the public, that things that aren't happening. And here now, when things are ramped up, I can sit here and say today, Shelley Pringree's been lying. Her comments today were inappropriate that she came out with today. And people are being treated with due process. They're being treated with respect there. Things are being run professionally. And this whole narrative that these ICE agents are just horrible, evil people, it couldn't be anything farther from the truth. It couldn't be anything farther from the truth.
Yeah.
Well,
again, to John's point, they're just lying. And I guess we're now in a dynamic where to win the Democratic primary, you have to be as extreme far left as possible. And so now, Graham Plattner, being the most radical or extreme of the people running for statewide office, is going to set the tone. And, Governor Mills, who, throughout her career has been, mildly pro law enforcement, pro law and order, she's going to have to abandon that and just follow Graham off the left wing cliff. They've all got to ratchet themselves up, and they're like in an arms race for retard is what they are. They're just going as far left as they possibly can. And Plattner, I think, has probably just, won the race finally by saying that local police should be treating this as a kidnapping. I mean, that's, as you said, Tom, the closest you could possibly come to calling for armed insurrection of local police going up against ICE agents. It's reprehensible, but that's what's going to dominate the primary dynamic.
Yeah, Matt, let's play that video of Graham Plattner from Europe today with this dispatch being incendiary. There's no other way to put it.
Good morning, everybody. I'm talking to you from the Copenhagen airport, which in the American terminal is very empty.
Is he whispering, or can we get more volume on that?
But Amy and I are on our way home from our Norway trip. But I wanted to address something that I'm looking at as I scrolled the news this morning, and it's the fact that over the past couple of days, ICE's operations are clearly rounding up people who are legally in the state of Maine. And something that I am blown away by is a video I just watched. The Cumberland County Sheriff saying that one of their correctional officers has been taken by ICE, someone who is here legally and works legally for the county as a corrections officer. Local law enforcement is not safe from abduction from ICE. I read another article about someone who's working as an engineer in Portland, has been here for years, has all the proper documentation, no criminal record, abducted and kidnapped. I read about a young man who has been here legally, no problems with his legal status, picked up going to class at USM. ICE is just kidnapping people who are here legally, including local law enforcement. I'm sick and tired of hearing that legally there's nothing that law enforcement in Maine can do to protect citizens from these thugs. I very much urge our state leadership to empower local law enforcement to do what it's supposed to do, which is protect our communities. And right now, our communities need protecting from the authoritarian overreach of ICE. And if they aren't going to do that, then we all need to turn out. And I'm going to be in Lewiston tomorrow for the anti-ICE rally, and I hope to see many of you there, because in the next few weeks, we as the people of Maine are also going to have to take part in defending our communities and our neighbors. Thank you very much.
So Graham Plattner is saying too that ICE should engage, that local law enforcement should engage ICE as if they are run-of-the-mill kidnappers, which would obviously involve force and using a lethal weapon, or at least having the threat of a lethal weapon being used present. I don't know how else to say it, but he wants to mobilize local law enforcement against ICE.
It sounds like
and
it sounds like he's even recruiting a militia, guys. I mean, he says the people of Maine are going to have to protect their communities. Let's all get together in Lewiston. We need to be, the state leaders need to arm local law enforcement, empower them with the tools to fight this. It really sounds like he's calling for some kind of a mobilization of a militia and deputizing people.
Yes.
Just like in Minnesota, this is it's Civil War talk.
Yeah, I think Graham Plattner is going to try to get himself arrested. I'm going to predict it right now. I think he's going to put himself in a situation where he is just obstructing law enforcement operation. He's going to be on all the anti-ICE apps, and it's going to be it's going to be the #1 video for his campaign ads is him getting put in handcuffs. That's my prediction moving forward here.
How does he know? How does he know the legal status of any of these people? Where's he getting his information?
Well, that's the thing, that it's a tough one to address, because if there's somebody who is here 100% legally and hasn't committed any crimes, then yeah, that was a bad move for ICE to arrest them. But I would say 99% of the cases, if someone is detained, ICE processes them and then they're released if they're not really subject to deportation orders. But in some instances, when ICE arrests someone that is going to be processed for administrative removal and they are a legitimate subject for deportation, they don't immediately release the information because there are privacy concerns for the person who is being detained. Again, it's not a criminal procedure, it's an administrative procedure. Like with the corrections officer, it appears that the Cumberland County Corrections Officer, it appears that his violations were immigration violations. And so in those instances, the entire criminal record might not be spilled out to reporters immediately. And we know this because we've asked for it and we've had this explained to us. And this isn't the first time. There was a case 2 years ago when there was a band of Guatemalan Home Depot thieves who were stealing copper wire from Home Depots up and down the East Coast. And 7 of them were grabbed and processed for removal. And nobody else in the media was concerned about that except for me. And I was the one trying to figure out why we couldn't find out information on these people. And that's when I learned through this process that sometimes when it's just an administrative removal, they don't release that information. And it's out of privacy concerns or privacy protections rules for the people who are being arrested and detained. Because again, it's not a criminal thing, it's an administrative procedure. So I don't think that Plattner has all of the information that he should have if he's going to begin calling for a civil war.
Well, I would also say, John, that to answer your question, how do they know the status of these people? I think now, since we've had the overlay now significantly for the last 9 months, and certainly the last 2 months, and certainly the last couple of weeks, of Nazi brown shirts with ICE, that they know the status of the people, because the people that the Nazis are going after are good. That's what they're seeing. So they know that anybody being apprehended by the brown shirts are good. And I'm not really being hyperbolic here. I believe that. If you look in our Facebook comments here, here's Joe. Bunch of fascist traitor 21st century SS. They will go down the same way. Well, those SS scum hung. We'd be happy for ICE scum to be deported to Seacot or simply to a nice perp walk to 10 or so years in some prison they built for immigrants. This rubric that was crafted by progressives and Democrats is effective. It's effective on just about half of the country. We've got a bunch of notes calling you guys liars about what you saw today, saying that you're apparatchiks, essentially. People are all in that what they're seeing. You saw the crazy lady today in the Lexus.
That's Dave's friend, yeah.
Yeah, this crazy lady in the Lexus who was honking her horn and had to do it with such emphasis that she had to use her elbow at some point. If you got that, Matt, throw that up there. These are people who were soft-spoken, latte-drinking people 1 year ago. And they are very, barely recognizable now.
I don't know if you can hear it, but at one point the ICE agents start honking their horn as well. joining in solidarity. But so I think these guys thought because we were parked next to an African market, and I say African market because that was the name of the store, was African Market. They thought that that's where the ICE agents were going and that they were somehow interrupting an arrest. But the ICE agents were actually just taking us to go see the agitators so we could get video of them and laugh.
That is funny.
So they
thought they had no reason to be there other than the agitators were there. And
yeah, so we were actually, in that instance, we were the ones tailing the agitators. But then, you know, the presence of the agitators, I guess if you can call them that, underscores another thing, that some of the ICE agents there are coming in from having just been in Minnesota. So you're going from this environment where there are, in some instances, gangs of Somalis surrounding you and trying to, stop an arrest from happening, trying to intimidate you. Or it's even worse, gangs of white liberal women who are harassing you and trying to, ram you with their vehicles. So they're amped up to 11. Like, they are full alert, full vigilance. And now they're here and they've brought the same mentality. And why wouldn't they, when Graham Plattner is accusing them of kidnapping and the Secretary of State is trying to dox their vehicles and the governor is saying similarly harsh rhetoric against them. So they're coming into a situation where they just have to assume that, the government and all of the, non-working leftists out in the street blowing on their whistles are hostile to what they're doing. And I think that explains a lot of the disconnect between ICE and local law enforcement, specifically with the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office. I mean, in the best of worlds, would ICE have been able to call the sheriff and say, hey, you had an issue with one of your corrections officer? Yeah, sure. I mean, they could do that with Sheriff King and the 5 or 6 or 7 non-citizens, illegal aliens that he's hired. They could do that and just resolve it without having to do this on the street. But the left has chosen a more pitched conflictual path of non-cooperation and calling them Nazis. And so there's going to be a reaction to that. Like, what the hell do you think that ICE is just going to say, like, oh, well, if they don't like us, I guess we're, not going to arrest these illegal alien killers, wife beaters, heroin dealers, and scammers. No, they have a job to do. And if they don't like what ICE is doing, then go get a congressional majority and change the law. Because right now they're enforcing the laws and they're using the police procedures that have been on the books forever. I mean, this is the same stuff that was happening when President Obama was in office, and none of these idiots were out there screaming about brown shirts and kidnapping. So it's all political garbage, and they're actually making people less safer by doing this. If Maine was cooperating with ICE, all of this targeted enforcement would be with the assistance of local police departments and incidental to other arrests. So the jails would just be turning over illegal aliens. But because the state has decided not to cooperate and to release illegal aliens onto the street all the time, regardless of what kind of heinous crime they've committed, they've created a scenario where ICE has to come in and do these, lurk in public housing complexes for the drunk drivers and the heroin dealers to come out to their cars.
Steve, did you guys get the sense today that your experience where it was kind of a slow day with not much action was more of an abnormality, or is that kind of what a lot of these operations end up with for these agents?
I think that it's, that's just like we discovered with you're running around the state hunting Chinese marijuana grows. They're not all going to be winners. There's a lot of police work, I think, involves boring stakeouts that never materialize into anything. So I think that was probably maybe indicative of what the majority of their days out doing operations are like. And I mean, there was quite a few agents out there. It seems like they're operating in that area pretty heavily, but it wasn't like we did not see chain gangs of 24 migrants being walked into the ICE processing facility. We didn't see any of that. It seemed like there was a lot of very careful, targeted work going on to identify known criminals, people who are known bad actors, people you don't want in your community. again, drug dealers, people with larceny convictions, people who have violent crimes. And yeah, again, the one that sticks in my craw a little bit, the Chinese illegal alien who scammed an elderly man out of $100,000. Like, I wish Graham Plattner could summon the same anger he has for law enforcement for a scammer who targets the elderly. But that's whose side he's on. I guess he's decided to be on the side of the scammers and the heroin dealers.
But the big takeaway that people have to understand here, this is targeted. This is planned. This is reviewed. This is communicate. I mean, this is not what the media want. Oh, just a bunch of thugs picking anybody with brown skin off the street. And Sophia Kalia is saying that they're targeting Somalis. They've only picked up one Somali. And I think Steve, the number they gave us was 184 people had been picked up so far.
Yeah, something over 100. It was over 100 people that they picked up through Operation Catch of the Day.
Somalis aren't being targeted. There is a plan, and the plan is if you've overstayed your visa, you've committed a crime, you've raped a child, you're a drug dealer, we're out looking for you. That's the plan. This terrorism plan that the media is trying to tell you is I was just going to swear. It's BS.
And again, these are the laws of the land. These are congressionally, passed laws. This isn't something that the ICE field agents aren't just inventing on a whim. They are enforcing the laws. So if you don't like it, if you think that illegal alien criminals should be able to remain in public housing, unmolested by law enforcement, and that's fine, that's the way America should be, then run on that platform, Graham Plattner, run on that platform, Janet Mills. Just come out and say it, that you think that illegal alien criminals should be kept in the United States, they should be protected from deportation, and you're going to support laws in Washington, D.C. that will make that a reality. Because until that happens, we have ICE, they have laws to enforce, that's their job, and that's what they're gonna do, and that's what they're doing.
Well, let me expand on that then, Steve. Working off of a comment on Facebook from Joe, who says, talking about Graham Plattner, this is a piece of bleep right here. I can't believe he was a Marine. I served in the USMC, and this is not a bleeping devil dog. This is a traitor. He is garbage and encouraging more violence and non-cooperation. Graham Pollard, you suggested that he'd try to get himself arrested. What is the extreme edge that you expect these politicians to take? Is it arrest, or is it something more?
Well, I think he's just going to be on the front lines on the anti-ICE app. He's like, if he was here last night, he would have been out there with the crowd in Portland with the drum set and banging on the pots and pans. And I think he's just going to, let's give him a little bit of credit. He is a good leader when in terms of presenting himself as more of that leader figure, even if I disagree with everything that he's saying. I can see him leading the charge of those anti-ICE groups and just really getting up in the faces of these people, and he'll know the cameras are on him. And I can see him not doing anything too crazy, but just I can see him totally angling for an arrest. I would also just say, no one on the right would ever do this because it's just a different psychology. But imagine if there was 200 people outside Graham Plattner's house with pots and pans banging away. It might take that as a counter approach, because I feel it's terrible for the people at that Residence Inn who are just normal people there on vacation or there for work on Tuesday. And because of this rumor that goes out that there might be ICE agents there, now they can't get any sleep and their night is disrupted. It's literally it's an unruly mob. It's the modern day equivalent of getting out there with the torches and the pitchforks. And I predict that when Graham Plattner's back in America, he'll be at the forefront of a lot of those.
Well, what will Graham Plattner do tomorrow? His words, he's going to be in Lewiston.
Mm-hmm.
And some, fat, balding guy that is going to be in Lewiston as well. And what's he going to do when I shove the camera right in his face and go, what are you doing? What are you doing? What's he going to say to me? Because he's probably
going to smile and say that, he'll come on the Robinson Report.
Yeah, right.
He's a little bit of a keyboard tough guy, but I don't think that he's going to be able to find that conflict. You might be right, Graham, that he fishes for it, and they may have some slick video that they put together of him driving around with his combat whistle. He's going to be with the septum piercing woman and his combat whistle driving around, hero of the immigrants. But if he really wants my vote, I'm going to need him at the Mogadishu store eating some of Mama Shukri's curry. That's what's really going to seal the deal for me.
Yeah.
Is if
or the camel.
or to the Naima restaurant. There's another one. If the Mogadishu store isn't open, he can go to the Naima restaurant. I want Graham Plattner on video eating some of that delicious Somali food that Jacob Fry was having. That's how if he really wants that vote, that Somali vote, he's going to have to do that. But I don't think that. I don't think he's going to be successful if he tries to be arrested. I think that the ICE agents are a little bit more savvy and know a little bit more about the agitators. I don't think that would be a successful operation on his part. Not saying that he's not going to try, and it wouldn't be a great campaign move given the attitude of the Democrat primary voters.
Yeah, I mean, he suggested that cops aren't going to stop kidnappings. He's got to do more than blow a whistle. If he sees a kidnapping happening, he's got to get right in there and be as proactive as possible. I mean, I think he's built his own fantasy world here, and he's declared himself a key character in this LARPing action. He's got to act that character out. And I mean, throwing haymakers or graffitiing ICE cars, who knows what it is. But I think he's got to do something. If we're playing the game for real, it matters. It matters, like the lady with the whistle with Alexis today. Does she believe it, or after 9 p.m. does the box Chardonnay come out and we're on to Real Housewives of wherever? So that's the question. I don't really know people who. I know plenty of people. Right, I know plenty of people who post on Facebook that ICE are Nazis. I know plenty of people telling me that there's an Anne Frank happening every day thanks to ICE, but I don't see them out and setting up IEDs, So it matters how extreme these people really are.
Yeah, here's the problem, Tom. So so Shelley Pingree yesterday, after the clarification from Homeland Security with the photo that's gone viral of the 5-year-old kid that they said was used as bait. So Shelley Pingree puts this incendiary statement out. How can anyone support this? This is an act of terror, yada, yada, yada. So I just comment with copy and paste the Homeland Security clarification that they put out there. Basically, I just said, here's some extra context. I got 4 or 5 replies to that being like, oh, I'll never believe those fascists at Homeland Security. Or it's like, oh, people just completely brush it off and don't even acknowledge that there could be potentially some nuance to these situations. So I think that's really where the disparity lies, is that, the people are so bought into this narrative that we've been talking about that they'll just never listen to us or listen to any other voices of reason and but actually believe what we're saying, unfortunately. And I'm talking about the people on the far, far left that are that bought in. And I think that's just kind of the reality that people like Graham Plattner are pandering for. They're seeing these headlines. Yeah, so there you go. I mean, and she posted this after the clarification had already been out for like an hour, and now there's videos, and they apparently took this kid to McDonald's and to a really nice facility, and we're playing his favorite music in the car. But, the lie can travel around the world before the truth gets out of bed. I've seen just normal people I know post this image on their Instagram stories all day today, and this is one of these things that's kind of taking off. F this administration, just from normal people that aren't involved in politics, just that I know and that I follow. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the nature of what the left-wing politicians are playing for. So, it's really a matter of the great reporting that you guys are doing that's going to have to start whittling away at this narrative and letting cooler heads prevail, I think.
Well, can I ask you about the event that's being held by Steve's secret admirer, Sophia Khalid, tomorrow, that Graham Plattner said that he's going to be at? Mm-hmm. I'm looking at Sophia Khalid's social media the last 24, 48 hours. She was on a show called Democracy Now!, saying the streets of Lisbon Street and Lewiston are empty, and she's picking up other people's children from school because they're worried that they're going to be kidnapped and picked up and stuff. So you're going to hold a rally in Kennedy Park in the middle of Lewiston tomorrow, and like the math doesn't work. Like either people are hiding or people are coming to your rally, but both can't be true. Which one is it?
I don't know. It seemed like people were hiding from the last rally, and nobody wanted to show up there to see, Kiernan and his band of misfits. I predict low turnout. We had a reporter who was in Lewiston today, actually, and says it's a little bit of a ghost town. And word on the street is that the seizing of the Mogadishu store's EBT terminal has had a chilling effect on some of the businesses in that area. So, I mean, read into that what you will. Why a welfare fraud investigation would cause a bunch of these businesses to suddenly go on vacation. But I don't think that it's going to be a very big rally. It does seem like the enthusiasm behind Graham is petering out, but who knows? Maybe maybe the Whistle Brigade has reinvigorated Maine's far left. But yeah, seems like both sides are miscommunicating. And to your point, Graham, about how they're not going to believe any new information that comes in. I kind of went into riding with ICE knowing that I'm predisposed to defend what law enforcement is doing, and it's kind of weird in a situation where like Sheriff Joyce and ICE are in conflict, trying to sort out who's right, who's wrong. So I was aware of my own biases there, and obviously people are going to say that we're there to alibi or do propaganda for ICE, but we can only tell you what happened. We can't make shit up about what we saw.
Right.
This is just the impression that I had, was that it's really just run-of-the-mill humdrum law enforcement activity that has become sensationalized and injected with conflict because of political leaders saying things about it that they would never, ever say about the same exact law enforcement actions if their guy or Barack Obama was in the White House. It's the same exact law enforcement activity. It's had to become more in the street because of sanctuary policies, but it's all being driven by politics, and especially the dynamic in the Democratic statewide primaries here in Maine.
So the term for what you're doing on Facebook by some of the folks is bootlicking. That's what you and John are doing. You're bootlicking.
Oh, that's well-known bootlickers here.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's in my LinkedIn.
by the way, I'm not going to charge Graham Plattner for this, but I want to see he's a boat guy. Let's have a nice beach landing, right? Right in Portland.
It's not a bad idea. The kayak flotilla that stormed over.
Coming up the Androscoggin. He's going to go down the canal and meet up with his troops at Canal Street at the Gateway office. Maybe actually, Tom, here's the idea. Maybe Abdullahi Ali and Graham Plattner can strike a deal to get that militia over from Jubaland. We recruit some Jubaland militia soldiers to Lewiston, and they can help lead the charge to get back to kidnapping victims. Well, and
are not Somalis a seafaring people? We noticed from
legendary, legendary masters of the sea. Yeah.
Justin says this goes along with what you were saying. I think, Graham, you were mentioning. Justin says, why would ICE focus on Maine with less than 1% of illegal aliens? Is it because Texas and Florida are red states? Then it's not as much about illegal immigrants as it is about flexing power. And how much of this is just the national argument come local?
I mean, that's a fair point. I would say Maine hasn't been in focus for a year, and now it is. I think it's a triage thing. They're moving down and enforcing in states one by one. Because I think there are some jurisdictional advantages to concentrating on just one state and then moving to the next state. There's probably a little element of politics to it, for sure. Wanting to have political cover for what you're doing. And I think in Minnesota, the House Oversight investigation and all the fraud allegations, probably elevated that state as an immigration priority. And that's probably the same thing happening in Maine as well. But for the red states cooperate with ICE. The red states don't release criminals onto the street just because they're illegal aliens. In blue states like Maine or Massachusetts, law enforcement becomes, and the judges become de facto allies of illegal alien criminals, helping them escape out the back door of courtrooms, releasing them on their own personal recognizance, and not turning over the criminals to ICE. In red states, if an illegal alien drunk driver or somebody who has a warrant out for their arrest in another country or another state, if they're arrested, they're going to be held. ICE is going to be notified, a detainer is placed on them, and they're removed. So you don't have this accumulation of thousands of illegal alien criminals living in your public housing. I mean, that's the truth, is that the blue states are going to be a higher priority because of policy decisions that they've made for political reasons that the people making those decisions can't see the end consequences of. It's the sanctuary city policies are making the states more dangerous, or at least more likely to have this kind of attention from ICE agents. That's why you're not seeing it in red states, is because red states don't have public housing complexes filled with illegal aliens. That's the other thing that should be, I think, outrageous to anybody in the state of Maine, especially progressives who claim to care about low-income people. Why should we have homeless veterans, homeless Mainers on the street, and subsidized housing complexes that are filled up with non-citizens and illegal aliens? Like, that doesn't seem right to me. It seems like a misprioritization of our limited and scarce resources. So that I think is an answer to the question, though.
And just to reiterate what Steve was saying, Tom, sanctuary city and sanctuary state policies put everyone at risk. But most importantly, who do they put at risk? Other immigrants. Because when ICE won't work with local enforcement to say, hey, that's where the bad guy lives, that it forces ICE to go into that community. Maybe something goes wrong, arrest that person or not arrest that person. But and Patricia Hines says this today in an interview with Steve, is that person's going to, if that person goes back to commit a crime, and it's a good chance that they will going forward, that's going to be crime on another ignorant. So sanctuary city policies that the woke wants you to say, oh, it makes everybody safe and everything, it makes everything more dangerous. And it's more dangerous to the immigrant community, and how people can't see that. It's time to, have another glass of that Box Chardonnay that Tom was talking about and face the facts. Sanctuary cities do not make you safer. They make it more dangerous.
They protect your voters, though. If you're worried about your illegal alien, non-citizen voters getting removed from the state, one good way to do that is to fight that, to resist their deportation, to try to get them de-arrested with the Whistle Brigade.
So, along with what John was saying, the CJR has been enraptured in states, both culturally and politically, in academia now, in a hyper strong way for the last 20 years, certainly the last 10 years, certainly the last 5 years. Criminal justice reform has made it so that many states, blue states, Massachusetts, Maine, and Connecticut, have essentially just constructed layer after layer of Iron Dome defense for criminality. And so it hits every aspect of criminal activity, including illegal immigration. And this is what you get. This is what we get. We got to feel good. And then they cook the books and lie to us about crime numbers going down. And you can see in the streets that there's a rot happening. But eventually, like historically, this happened in New York at least once, where it got turned around. Rudy Giuliani went in there and turned things around. Graham, did you want to pop on?
No, you keep going, Tom. Sorry.
You have the Graham. I'm going to pop on and say something profound.
No.
Microphone. Look. No. Okay. Good. That gives us a good area to pivot. I was today. You're not going to find this fascinating, but I was grabbing salt for the snow of the blizzard we're getting. 2 big buckets of salt for in the middle of my town. There's a place where you get the salt. And I found myself parked there next to the salt for about 45 minutes listening to Steve talk to Sean Ryan about the children's autism scandal in Maine. And I had known about the money. We had talked about the money, and we've been sharing documents about the money. You guys have scraped up all sorts of great stuff. I had no idea about the human cost to this. It was freaking heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. I would commend anybody. Actually, we've got a one clip of Steve with Sean Ryan where he kind of sets it up here. I would commend this podcast to people and just get ready, man, because Bleep's going to slow down in hour number 3, and it gets damn serious and just utterly heartbreaking. But yes, Steve, if you have that, Matt, just throw to that video. If we don't have it, that's fine. We get the real Steve right here, right now.
Yet again, another, what I would say is fairly described as a conspiracy to exploit the people of Maine, our most vulnerable disabled population, to enrich yourself from the taxpayers that, for whatever reason, the powers that be are just turning a blind eye to. And maybe they don't know that it's happening, and they will now, but it's infuriating. I mean, I've interviewed so many people who have worked in these houses and have said, we tried to blow the whistle on this. We tried to complain. And we were told, if you want to keep your license in whatever field you're in, you'll stop talking about this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the lead story in the Maine Wire right now, Maine flagged for $45.6 million in improper payments for children's autism care, federal audit says. Steve, kind of take us through the X's and O's of the crime and then the human fallout, if you can.
Yeah, so the report that was issued yesterday is for Section 28 of Maine Care, which is children's autism. That is different from what I was talking about with Sean. What I was talking about with Sean is Maine Care Section 21, which is adults with autism or intellectual and developmental disorders. The report yesterday was a federal report that was written by the Office of the Inspector General, reviewing just 1 year of claims that the state accepted and applied for reimbursement from the federal government for. And I think the total is $46 million in erroneous claims. And one of the reasons why I think this report is going to be especially damaging for the Mills administration and for the Department of Health and Human Services is that this is a program that Gateway Community Services build heavily under. This supposed, at-home care and services for autism. It's also the program out in Minnesota that was very heavily abused by some of these autism centers. So I think that the Inspector General's report really just is kind of foreshadows what could be coming with greater scrutiny on the program. And the other thing is the Mills administration, or at least the Department of Health and Human Services, they concur with the findings. They don't dispute it. There's a line in the report where it says that they tentatively agree with the findings, but they're going to go back and they're going to do their own review. This points towards just a shocking lack of oversight, or maybe even just like a quiet complicity in what's happening, an unwillingness to scrutinize Medicaid claims. Maybe just they want to kick as much Medicaid money out the door as possible because they think that that's going to further some kind of political end or juice the GDP with just, fraud cash. But something has gone horribly wrong if there's that level of improper payment happening in just 1 year, just in 2023, 1 year in one program of Medicaid. The issue that we were talking about with Sean is Maine Care Section 21. These are residential homes for individuals who are autistic, have, like I said, the intellectual or developmental disorders. And we came onto this story because we get the Medicaid spending data. And I wanted to see what are the new companies that have come on the scene in Maine since 2020? Because in 2020, you have not only Governor Mills coming into office, her first full year, she drastically expands Medicaid. There's also some changes that are made to the citizenship eligibility for Medicaid. So as Democrats come in and make all these policy changes around Medicaid, I wanted to see how the provider world was changing. So when we take the spreadsheet of payments by provider from 2019 to 2024, and we filter out anyone who was billing in 2019 or 2020, you get just the startups. These are Janet Mills Maine Care startups. And we started looking at these companies, and they were all autism. They were all adult autism homes, 2-bed residential facilities. And when we started looking into the ownership structure of these companies, it quickly became apparent that they were all what the left would describe as new Mainers. And as we looked closer at what was happening, we just found all kinds of strange numbers, like, you know, a company that has just 44 autism beds billing $17.3 million in 2024. The math is a little weird on that. And the more we started talking with people who had worked at these companies, health professionals who have been in these homes, people who work for competitors, real estate professionals, law enforcement throughout the state, the more it just seemed like something is very off in how these homes are being run. And there's also these profligate displays of wealth. Like, all of these guys are driving Mercedes-Benz G-Wagons. One guy, I think John, saw a driveway with 2 Mercedes-Benz G-Wagons in it. They have multiple houses, and everybody who's ever worked in a Medicaid sustained industry will tell you that the margins are very tight. No one is getting into a Medicaid funded profession in order to become really, really rich. No one thinks they're going to be driving around in a $200,000 Mercedes G-Wagon. And yet here you have these people who have arrived in Maine as asylum seekers from 2019 to 2023. And all of a sudden they're running these wildly lucrative businesses that are increasing their billing year over year, sometimes 10xing their businesses year over year, just in terms of Medicaid money flowing into them. So something is clearly amiss. And the more we talked to people and learned about what's actually going on inside these houses, we learned that the neglect and abuse was widespread, was part of the business model. And in some cases has even led to the deaths of some of these disabled individuals. And the tragic part of it is that a lot of these people are nonverbal, so they'll never be able to really express what exactly has happened to them in these houses. And so much of it is caused directly by the lack of English-speaking direct support professionals. So you have a home with 2 disabled adults living in it, and the only caretakers that are shuffling in and out of that house don't speak English. So they can't speak, they can't read a dietary plan, they can't read a medication plan, and they can't communicate with the patients or their guardians. There's just a total breakdown of care that comes when there's this basic language friction. And the people we've talked to said that the callousness has just become cultural. It's these homes have become really just a place for asylum seekers to live, and there are autistic adults who are pushed off into bedrooms and basements so that the asylum seeker workers can monopolize
and these are their
space.
Homes. Medicaid is paying for them to have these homes, the patients. And so they're having these people, these become interlopers, just take over their houses and relegate them to God knows what. And as you were saying today, that was blowing me away here. There's no concern, or there's reports of no concern for cultural norms for these people, for dietary norms, for any kind of societal or cultural influence that they may have grown comfortable with for their entire lives. These people essentially, some of them are living in solitary confinement.
They are. And there are clinical professionals we've talked with who have had relationships with some of these patients for many years before they were placed in the homes that they're in now. So they've been able to see the decline in their quality of life, the decline in their cognitive mental well-being. They've been able to see very much that these people are forced into these homes, in some cases against their clearly stated will. So, many of them are nonverbal, but a lot of them can speak perfectly well and understand their predicament. And there are at least some of them do not want to be where they are, and they're being forced into that situation. And I would say it's mysterious why the state is allowing this to happen, because there are so many different safeguards that should be in place to stop this from happening. This is all happening under the Office of Aging and Disability Services, which is a part of the Department of Health and Human Services. There are checks within that system that should prevent it from happening. There's a list that patients who have requested to be placed in a different house, there's supposed to be a list that their name goes on, and that list is supposed to be circulated amongst all of the residential care providers, and they can be like drafted into another house. That is not functioning the way it should be. We have Adult Protective Services, an entire government agency that is supposed to protect adults who are in situations like this. That seems to be breaking down. We have the long care health ombudsman, who's supposed to be doing something similar to what the child welfare ombudsman does, and writing about, reviewing, investigating problems within the adult care world. That's breaking down. So there are so many levels of government failure that are allowing this to happen, that you have to wonder if it's not happening intentionally, if there's not some, a government bureaucrat making a little bit of money on the side to make this happen. It's really, it's difficult to understand why it's been allowed to continue the way it is. The amounts of money that we're talking about, I mean, over a 4 or 5 year period, this is, $200-300 million that these companies are raking in. So it would have to be something that comes to the attention of really any competent leader at HHS who is looking at the balance sheets and trying to understand the explosive runaway costs in the Medicaid world. And another thing is that the number of Section 21 waivers in Maine, which every single one of these houses needs Section 21 waivers. They're federal waivers that are granted to the states in order to provide this level of care, which is extremely expensive in terms of what the levels of care that Medicaid provides. The number of waivers that Maine has received has actually gone down since 2019. So there's fewer adults in need of this level of residential care, yet just explosion of new companies coming on the scene and making boatloads of money taking care of these individuals. So what exactly is going on there? And it's something that we continue to investigate, and we will be publishing some stories about it and publishing some interviews that we have, some video interviews. But the opportunity to talk to Sean about it was one that I couldn't pass up. So I think we kind of prematurely broke the story a little bit with Sean and let people know that it was something that we're looking into. But I've seen enough at this point. If I'm like a ref, like I'm willing to call it right now. Like, we'll be able to fully explain exactly what's happening and what we've seen in a long form written story and some of those interviews. But I've seen enough to understand that it's morally repugnant what is happening in these homes, and the fact that there's nothing being done about it. The fact that whistleblowers are being threatened suggests to me a level of corruption in state government that is just mind-numbing.
It is telling too that, and Carrie asks, who's signing off on these payments. This is what you spent the last 5 minutes talking about. There's just no disincentive for anybody along the pipeline. It seems like it seems like
it's all federal money. It's federal money. The state's not going to have to account for it. It's it's like a 90-10 federal expense share. But there are people at the Office of Aging and Disability Services who are signing off on these. There are mechanisms in place that should be stopping this kind of abuse and neglect from happening. But they're just not. They're failing. They're not working. They're not doing their job.
It almost gives you a weird claustrophobia to think that the people who are most affected by this are nonverbal and can't do a GD thing. Oh, it's so frightening.
Yeah, please, I mean, there have been cases of sexual assault and death at these houses. Disabled adults who have certain restrictions on what they're supposed to be eating, who have choked to death, unwanted sexual touching. But you're dealing with, in some cases, victims who have the cognitive capacity of an 8-year-old, even though they may look like an adult. Their testimony is not. How do you handle that testimony in court? It's very, very difficult. So again, they're the most vulnerable people in our society, because regardless of what happens to them, no one's going to believe them. It's very, very difficult for a court or law enforcement to handle that. And for the individuals who have passed away, the only witnesses there are the non-English speaking residential care support providers, or whatever they're called. It's a messy situation, and all the more reason to have English speakers in those positions. Not every job in the state of Maine requires you to speak English, but if you're taking care of somebody who, through no fault of their own, can't take care of themselves, and they have very important, very high stakes dietary and medication plans, you should be able to read those. You should be able to understand those, and you should be able to communicate with the people who you're tasked with providing 24/7 care for. And also, if the state of Maine, if the taxpayers are paying for 24/7 care, in some cases with staffing ratios of higher than 1-to-1, so like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 workers to individual, then that person shouldn't be choking to death on a pancake.
Right.
Just shouldn't happen. Like, they should at least be able to jump in there with a Heimlich maneuver. Some of the details that we've read from or heard from law enforcement sources is just it really, really will destroy your faith in humanity. Like, disabled adults who are found wandering on the side of the highway by law enforcement, and they're brought back to the residential care facility where they're supposed to have a 2-to-1 staffing ratio, and there's nobody there. So that just disabled adults with the cognitive abilities of children being just abandoned by the taxpayer-funded professionals who are supposed to be taking care of them. And you can bet your balls that they're still billing 100%, like they've got a bunch of people staffing that house.
Yeah.
And another weird thing is, we drive past these houses and half of the license plates are from out of state. Texas, Minnesota, Ohio, Massachusetts, New York, all over the place. Something is bringing them here to Maine.
Let me go to Johnny says, Steve, Trump created PPP $800 billion, and it's estimated 40% of that was fraudulent. But you don't care, maybe because it was committed by middle-class white folks?
No, we've reported on it a bunch. It is. It's outrageous. The payroll protection plan was the biggest, most defrauded program on the planet. Yeah, he's right. 100%. It was awful. We've reported at length. I think I've reported more on PPP loan use by Maine businesses than anybody. And he's right, too, that the law firms and accounting firms in the state of Maine applied for this money when they didn't need it. It was dirty and unethical, and they shouldn't have taken that money.
Yeah, the COVID F-up has many authors of both parties. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before we go, I want to run something by you guys, since we're having a Snowmageddon this weekend, Sunday. I'm supposed to get 2 feet. What are you guys supposed to get? Do you guys know?
I thought we were like 8 or 10 inches, maybe.
Yeah, I've seen like 8 to 12. Fair. 8 to 12.
It's not fair. Massachusetts has done so well on climate. Why am I being punished? Juliet Kayyem. That's it. Juliet Kayyem, who is on CNN. She just wants a gig really bad. She ran for governor kind of in Massachusetts about 10 years ago. She was with the the Obama administration. She had this tweet, which I thought was very telling. She's mad because Trump tweeted out something like he often does. Trump did one of his tweets saying, record cold wave expected to hit 40 states. Rarely seen anything like it before. Could the environmental insurrectionists please explain whatever happened to global warming? To which she says, notice how everything in this statement about a massive and dangerous weather front impacting much of America is all about him. No message to citizens. No promise of help. Not even advice to stay indoors.
Do you need advice to stay indoors when it's snowing? I mean,
I'm looking forward to going outside, actually. I don't get to go outside very often. I'm in here on the computer all day.
But doesn't it just tell you that the mindset of a progressive? Tell me what to do, big government. Should I shelter in place? Tell me, hold my hand and I'll do it, and I'll stay away from my neighbors, and I'll social distance, and then you can pat me in the head and call me a good person. Tell me what to do. Should I stay indoors? You effing kidding me? How childish is this? Oh, she's supposed to be a Homeland Security expert.
Yeah.
Shelter, whether it's a marathon bombing or COVID, the answer is never to shelter in place. Ever. We're a country. You have a country. You don't shelter in place. You survive, and you survive COVID, and you keep the businesses surviving, and you keep the kids' mental health surviving, and you go out there, and despite COVID, despite blizzards, and despite bombings, you go out there and have fruitful lives. Ticks me off.
That's a good
I think
one.
what we really need, I think what Juliet really wants is Trump out there with the Ron DeSantis style vest, the Mima vest and the tall boots and maybe like a winter hat, like he's ready to brave the elements. I've always thought that theater was interesting from the hurricane states, where they go out there looking like they themselves are going to be personally fighting the hurricane. It's like a weird form of stolen valor or cosplay or something. But that attitude that she expresses, help me, Father Government. Like, hasn't she been in Massachusetts for like 20 years? You think an elderly woman like Juliet would know how to deal with a snowstorm by now.
Yeah, and to want to be told to just submit. Just tell me what to do. I just want to get through it. Oh, it's terrible. Snowstorms are for going and finding a good bar. That's what you're supposed to do during a snowstorm. Damn it! All right, so
we're going to Tom's house.
That's right. We are stocking up, as you guys know if you've watched the Slack. Graham Pollard, thank you, Matt. All week, great week for all you guys. John Featherston, Steve Robinson. Congratulations to you guys. You had a long day today. We've got just incredible content. Please, if you're not subscribed already, thank you guys in the comments. You can go to the Maine Wire, sign up certainly for the Maine Wire for the newsletter, and follow us on YouTube, please, too. The
Robinson Report on YouTube. So all these episodes go up about an hour or two after the live ends, just going to render and all that stuff. But they'll all be up on YouTube. And then, of course, you can watch these after the fact on Facebook and X as well.
And I guess before we go, we should read exclusive breaking news. I just tweeted out the statement. ICE is responding to Cumberland County Sheriff Kevin Joyce, who had a press conference that's now become celebrated by the progressives, in which he rebuked ICE for having too many agents for an arrest operation and for not giving him a heads up that one of his corrections officers was an illegal alien.
Bush League.
Bush League is what he said, yes. So this is a statement from ICE Deputy Assistant Director Patricia Hyde, whom we interviewed today, and we'll have on the Robinson Report, we'll have a more lengthy interview posted there with her, where she addresses a lot of the things that political leaders in Maine have been saying about Operation Catch of the Day. Statement is, while Sheriff Kevin Joyce was busy grandstanding and attacking ICE, our officers were risking their lives to keep Cumberland County safe, arresting dangerous criminals and upholding the law. Those same brave law enforcement are grappling with a 3,000% increase in assaults and a staggering 8,000% uptick in death threats because of political antics like these, said ICE Deputy Assistant Director Patricia Hyde. Instead of owning up to his own department's failures, including hiring an illegal alien as a correctional officer, Sheriff Joyce chose to turn on his law enforcement brethren and smear the brave men and women of ICE. But we will not be intimidated or obstructed from doing our congressionally mandated duties. Sheriff Joyce should clean up his own house before criticizing those who actually protect our communities. So fighting words from ICE. And I would say that there's some real consequences that could come from this fight, because the federal government and the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department have an agreement to house people who are being staged for removal. And if that agreement was to be terminated, it would be a financial earthquake for the prison that Sheriff Joyce runs. And we don't have any inside information about that. That's pretty well known that agreement is in place. And it's the kind of agreement that allows the prison to be sustained without, taxes on Cumberland County residents making up for the difference. So that could be hanging in the air.
They pulled all their prisoners out last night. So, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they pulled all their prisoners out, that could be a saber rattling to the sheriff, or that could, presage something more consequential coming. So we'll have updates on that, I'm sure, on Monday.
All right. One addendum to what we've been saying. Sandy says, why would President Trump tell you to stay inside? Melania movie is opening. I didn't know that was opening, but she deserves a movie.
Tonight, tonight.
By the way, I believe she's an immigrant. There you go. Celebrating our immigrant population. Here's another thing, by the way. Guys, what if Trump had tweeted out for everybody to stay inside during the blizzard?
Yep.
evil Hitler.
He's trying to stop the immigration protests. What a fascist! He's ordering us under house arrests to protect the Gestapo. Yeah, he's in a point. I guess in his first term, he already had. Either way you lose. It doesn't matter what you say; they're going to find a reason to attack you.
Yeah.
Now he's reached the kind of nirvana where he just doesn't care.
Oh yeah, it is fascinating to watch. All right, with that, we're really going to go now. John Featherston, Steve Robinson.
Tell people to watch Fox News tomorrow. We'll be talking about the Lewiston shooting at 10:15 tomorrow morning. So
here we go. Who's hosting that show?
Kelly McInerney, their former press secretary.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Nice hit, John. Fox News tomorrow morning. John Featherston to be on. Steve Robinson undoubtedly will be popping up somewhere on a podcast with 8 billion followers. Graham Pollard and Tom Shattuck will be holding down the fort. Guys, thank you so much. You have been fantastic. Have a great weekend.